So how long have you been in the lift industry yourself?
Well, I started 17 odd years ago now.
Yeah.
I think it was. It will be 17 years. My son was born when I was working for Otis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 17 years ago.
Yeah. And so have you been around all the different lift companies?
Well, not all. I've been in the major. So I started in Otis,
Mm.
and did a few years there, and yeah, wasn't for me.
Mm.
I ended up going to Schindler. I spent a long time at Schindler. That's where you and I obviously met.
Yep.
And learned a lot there. Learned an awful lot at Schindler in different areas, and did lots of different roles there.
Mm.
And then I left Schindler. Had a lovely, nice long holiday, which I really enjoyed.
We needed. Yeah.
Needed, but apparently the wife was climbing into me to get money back in the door. Apparently.
Yeah.
And so then Kone were looking for somebody, because the person at Kone had left there and took my role at Schindler, because obviously they needed to replace me, so he did that, which left a gap at Kone. So I went back into the lift industry and worked for Kone, and basically worked for Kone mostly ever since. Yeah.
Is it one of those industries where there's quite it's so specialist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there quite a tight group of people that you keep seeing at all the different companies and things? A bit like that.
Yeah, pretty much. We all have a bit of a joke. I mean, we go to a big tender walk around for a big company here, and you bump into the same crew every time. And you know that they've been at whichever different company. We are a very incestuous little industry as such, if you want to use that word.
Yeah.
So most of the people that I walk around the lift tender side of things with, I've worked with, or I've known for years, and it's one of those things that we have a good laugh, we have a chat, we're all effectively friends. Keep it clean. We don't talk about work.
Right.
The lift industry is very, very, very strict about keeping things confidential, and we do.
Is that at a corporate level?
At a corporate level, but all the way down. So you can have a friend, but you don't talk about work. I mean, at the end of the day, my role is my role at Kone, and I might have a friend in another lift company as such, or a person I know, but it doesn't matter. We're in business, and I work for Kone, and that's what I do. So yeah, we keep the work stuff quiet, have a bit of a laugh, talk about who's done what, and etc.
Is it largely down to like the IP of the lift companies? Has each lift company got its own little special IP that they're busy trying to protect?
Yeah, basically. When you're looking at different lifts, especially in today's world, you've got the intelligence of the lift and the programming and everything else that goes into them, and the more higher up the level of unit you get, the more IP there is. But it's not only just that. I mean, it's we what's the old word? In years gone by, people in different industries, the mafias and all those sort of things, they talked and split things. That we don't do that.
Yeah.
There's no room for monopoly in the industry, but it's each of them. We want to win jobs and pick up customers and grow on our own merits, not because we can find out information about our competitor and beat that.
Yeah.
It's we're doing it for what we do, and I don't need their information because we do what we do, and that's all there is. And so we like to keep it all confidential. It's our IP, but it's also our business.
Yeah, and I guess if all the companies operate on that basis, then that's just how it is.
Yeah, absolutely, and they do.
Yeah.
The lift industry is very much very clear cut, and what I would class, very, very ethical in that sense.
And so, as an industry, would you agree or disagree that lifts have probably been the main sort of factor that's changed buildings certainly, but changed how we live? Do you think? Would that be one of the key sort of things, the invention of the lift?
Look, yes. I mean, in the olden days, you had a 1 or 2 story building, and you had great big stairs. You would never build a 10-story building. Well, you wouldn't think you would, or a 20-story, 30, 50, without a lift or lifts. You do. People rely on lifts now. It becomes a staple of any building that's going above effectively one level. it also means you've got handicapped people in wheelchairs. If you don't have a lift, they can't get up a building. You're discriminating against them. It's not fair. They got to have the same rights as everybody else. But it just the differences in what we can do with lifts means we can take things higher, and as humans grow in population size, we got to go effectively. The cities have to go up. We're not spreading out over the whole land, so we just got to go up. I mean, we talked about before where Dubai, Kone have got a building which is under construction or will be under construction, where we're going to be. It's going to go 1 kilometre in the sky. And Kone's got a very specific lift. We're the only ones that can do it with lightweight ropes that can go that high. I mean, that's a long lift journey.
Yeah, is that one continuous lift?
It can be, yeah. It is, yeah. I mean, there's got to be more than one lift, trust me.
But you don't have to get out of one, get into another. You can literally go 1 kilometre in one lift car.
Yep. And that's only because Kone have designed a particular style of rope, which is a fibre optic, and it's a much more lightweight thing than the big old steel ropes. The weight of steel ropes on a normal lift going 1 kilometre in the sky prevents you from going that high. Yeah. It's just crazy.
Wow.
So yeah, with the lifts, the other thing with lift and lift designs is that we're going in areas where we're trying to integrate with buildings and stuff. I mean, I saw a presentation where someone was looking at the future where people will live in a building. They won't really go outside. They'll sort of maybe go across a courtyard to where their work's going to be, across another courtyard to where the supermarket. They're almost going to live in a little caged community, which is a horrible thought. But
it's we use the term vertical village. So essentially, it's that, isn't it? Like a small town.
That's pretty much it. And lifts will become part of your own personal experience, where you want the lift to be there when you're walking out the door. You want it to know where you're going, so it take you here. The next one across the road is going to be there waiting for you, and to make your journey quick, fast, and that's kind of one of the areas that we're heading towards.
So how far away is that technology?
We're doing it now, effectively.
Is there anywhere in New Zealand that's got a similar thing?
No, we're just sort of getting into you with lifts. When you're talking like the destination control type lifts, where that lift is now designed for your personal journey. And there's a number of buildings in town which Kone and we've got destination control, and basically means that the lift is a good program. So you've got access to it. You come in and you're not pressing an up button going up, I'm going to go up. No, you're telling the lift what floor you want to go to. So I'm going to go to level 25. The lift quickly works out how it can get you to level 25 the quickest and most comfortable for you. Now, somebody else might come in behind you and choose a floor, and they might get their lift before you, because the system will tell you what lift you're going to get.
Oh, yeah.
And so they might get their lift first, but the lift you're getting might not stop at 3 other floors. It might go straight up. So it's all about your personal journey. And so we've got that in play now. We've also developed and kind of got a great system where we've got APIs which we can add into lifts now, which can integrate with building systems, and there's so many. We've got one called Bindu Maps, which we're trying in our office now, and actually give you directions and call the lift, and you can do everything from your phone. So we can walk into our building and go, right, get the lift. So when you get to the lift from your phone, the lift's there waiting for you. And
so it's hi, Richard.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, when those sort of things get everywhere, there's a huge array of things that we can do now. I'm not going to say there's probably no limit. The sky's the limit. Literally, but it just needs us to start thinking of those things and where we want to go with them and who wants to do it. We've now got the lifts that can have that capability, and we can put that on for people where they want to take it through their buildings with different apps and different organisations to what they want to add to it. We can work with them. I mean, robots. Yeah. We've got a robot in our head office in Sydney. Yeah. And effectively, it'll call the lift. It'll drive itself around throughout the building, whatever floor, deliver coffee or a package or whatever. Yep. But it'll go from the front door down the hallway. It'll call the lift. It'll get in the lift. It'll go to the 7th floor, find who he's got to drop off whatever to, go back, jump in whatever lift is available,
Yeah.
wait for the lift, go down.
That's one less person essentially? It might be like, a robot's taking our jobs, but
Yeah.
it is what it is, I guess, at the end of the day.
You could say that, but the reality is you're getting people now can focus on doing better things.
Yeah.
So instead of having someone who, I don't know, goes around and empties the rubbish or walks around delivering your mail to you, you can employ that person to actually
Better value.
Can you streamline our mail process? Can you do this? Can you do this? And it's better for them because they actually, it's not about getting rid of people, it's about getting them doing better work and having some of these little tasks can be done by robots.
You mentioned some interesting terminology before around, was it something about destination control? And there was one other thing that you said, shoot, I can't remember it, but it sounded very specific, obviously, to lifts, but it sounds like there's some real interesting language being used around to describe moving, essentially just moving people, isn't it?
Yeah, people flow. We'll kind of call it people flow.
Yeah.
And it's a personal journey for people. We're trying to now get lifts so that each person has their own personal journey as such, and they get to their destination in the best possible time for them. Whatever else we need to do for them, but that's the idea. So we're going away from everybody comes in, you press a button, and everyone squeezes into one lift, and off it goes, and it stops at every single floor, and everyone else is waiting like the old, the Japanese train system where they get pushed in, and then they wait for the next one. We're going away from that model. It still works fine if you've got a smaller building, you don't have too many tenants, but where destination control is actually at its best is when people are coming in like that 8 o'clock in the morning. The 8 o'clock in the morning rush. People coming into the lobby, you've got 150, 200 people, and you've got 4 lifts. They can't all fit in.
Yeah, that's right.
So you don't want people sitting around in the lobby for half an hour because they're not doing the work and they're getting angry. So it's about getting them through that building as quick as possible. And so the destination control is a best way of managing that real influx. So it's the morning, the lunch times, in and out, and the exiting out of the building where they have the most effect. And they get people, because with a lift, if it's going, say you've got 20 stories in your building, and if the lift is stopping at every second floor, it's not gaining any speed or momentum. So every time the lift doors close, it's got to ramp its power up, and then it's got to slow down. So you're getting a little jump. Whereas if a lift can go from ground to 10 and then go out 10 to 20, it's closing, it's ramping up, it's going full speed for the bulk of the building, then slows down, and then it's full speed again. Your actual lift journey is shorter.
Very much. It sounds very much like rush hour traffic. When you've got same sort of thing. When you've got people waiting for the lift, it's like they're waiting in their cars, and then when you're having to stop, start, and on the motorway or in traffic, you're using more fuel when you stop starting, and I guess it's the same with the way that the lift consumes electricity.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the other things that we're very keen on is reducing our global footprint. Reducing power. I mean, that if you had a lift from say the 70s, an old DC controlled generated lift, solid beast, but chews power like you wouldn't believe, and you upgrade it to a new lift today, you probably save 70, 75% in power savings.
And is that purely from the computer aspect of it, or is it the materials that it's made out of? Is it lighter? Or?
Well, obviously everything we do is now it's lighter, it's more recyclable. We're smarter in everything we do in the manufacture side of things, but it is also in the power. I mean, with an old DC generator unit, the DC generator is just running. It's just running all the time. Whereas the new ones now, they'll close everything down, they'll shut down. If the lift is not in use, generally they'll turn the inside lights and everything off. So everything's saving power, and obviously talking lights, you have LEDs, etc., which reduce things as well. And so when they ramp up, they're not drawing as much power to ramp up as much as they used to, because things are a lot smaller, but a lot more efficient.
Yeah, and there's a big push, in I guess in our industry and in most industries, that buzzword around sustainability.
Absolutely.
And having lifts, using their technology to save power or prolong their own lives in that. As building managers, and I guess one of the reasons why we're having this chat today is most of our buildings have lifts.
Yeah.
Very rare that they, even like 3-story buildings tend to have lifts these days. And so we have a lot of interaction with lifts, with people in lifts, with lift technicians, etc. I guess the main bugbear for people, not bugbear, but there's always a chance, well, that you get stuck in a lift. And for how many lifts there are, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's like, oh shit, what do I do? And people panic, right? They kind of freak out. What's your, like, as a company, you guys must have a it must be a common thing that you talk about, how to...
Yeah, I mean, getting trapped in a lift is not pleasant. No one wants to get trapped. I mean, I've been trapped in lifts myself several times.
It's kind of ironic, eh?
Yeah, well, it happened while I used lifts a lot,
yeah,
obviously,
true, yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah, your chances are probably a lot higher than most.
Yeah, you'd say so. It breaks down to the people that are using. If someone's claustrophobic, 5 minutes in a lift that's not working, it's going to be horrible for them. Anybody getting trapped in a lift is not pleasant. But I mean, there's the myths around it, and the movies have done us a lot of damage, I guess.
That's a good point.
They really have.
Yeah.
There's some horror movies and everything else.
But hey, you can just jump out of the the lift car through the ceiling, and then you're on top of the lift. It's like,
you can't quite just do that.
Yeah.
We can get you out if we really have to.
Yeah.
We can get you out that way if we really need to. But it's not something you can go and necessarily do yourself.
Just by removing the panel.
And nor should you ever try.
Oh, yeah.
But the lift itself in the lift shaft is one of the strongest, safest parts of a building. And as a rule, lifts don't plummet to the ground. That's a misconception.
Yeah.
What lifts can do, if something's happened, and they've got so many safety devices on them now, which is great. And if something just clicks, the lift will stop. It'll shut down and go, right, there's a problem. I'm shutting down and keeping everything safe, and we'll get a lift technician here to fix it. Occasionally, that can mean someone's stuck inside it. They are safe. There is airflow. Yep. If they're there for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, there's 5 or 6 of them, it's going to get a little warm. Unfortunately.
And I guess the big thing is, if someone got stuck in a lift and they're busting to go to the toilet, that's an issue potentially. But like you say, they're safe devices, aren't they? I mean, they've got a hell of a safety record. I've experienced people coming to us and saying, "Oh, I felt the lift drop. It dropped a meter." And I'm like, "No, it didn't. It can't really. They can't drop that far. It might have felt like a sensation of like a bit of a tummy flutter or whatever, but you're saying that the safety mechanisms on these lifts are so robust." Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in the lift this morning before I came here, and it did a crash stop when I was in it. And it does. It feels like it's dropping, but it's not. It's just stopping. But of course, you're going. The journey I was going in, you're going up. The lift car's going up. Your body's going up. Everything in inertia is taking you up, and then for it just to stop, you're going up. And it feels like you're crashing down. Doesn't happen. But also the other thing is when you're going in a lift in a high-rise building, the indicator inside the lift, you're looking at it going 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all fine and dandy, and it's done in a nice even pattern so you can see that you're going up nicely. But in reality, the lift is changing speeds as from when it starts, going through the shaft, and when it slows down. So where the position of the lift actually is doesn't always exactly marry up to what you're seeing in the indicator.
Yeah, for sure.
So you might be, it might go 5, 6, 7, and then the lift crash stops. But then it drops down to 4. Doesn't mean you've gone from 7 to 4.
Yeah.
It just means the indicator's recalibrated to where you actually properly are, and the lift has just stopped.
So that indicator is more for, it just gives you the idea that you're moving rather than being
it shows you roughly where you're going, and gives people a sense of not belonging but security, that they're going up the building or going down the building nice and steady. And
the other thing that happens too is when someone gets stuck in a lift, and like I say, this is rare, but they'll call us because there are numbers that usually on the sign in the lift, and they're like, "Oh, I'm stuck in the lift," and it's like, that button with the bell on it or the little symbol, like press that, hold it down for 5 seconds, it'll call through to the your call center, and they organise the tech just like that. But to call us is kind of not the right thing to do.
No, one of the things is you press and hold the button, generally 5 seconds, and then someone should answer. People today have cell phones, which is just about every single one of us has one. So there should be a phone number. If you got nowhere else to call, call yourself, and you'll log a call with us or whatever, or the emergency services if there's a real problem. Because we don't, the lift industry, we don't have sirens and flashing lights. So we can't ride up curbs and do all that sort of thing, and park wherever we want. We still have to obey all rules. So if there's an emergency, the emergencies of the fire department, you can call them. They quite often damage a lift, by the way, but they'll get you out.
Well, it's like lifts become one of those things that they're essential in a building, and people get so used to them. And if they, on the rare occasion that they do break down, it's really noticeable. It's like I don't know. It's like having the water turned off at the mains. Where's the bloody water? Where's the lift? It's just an essential aspect of that, of how the building operates and how people move within the building, like you say.
One of the hard parts for us, and it's, I guess, getting it to get to people to understand, because most people don't need to know about a lift. I mean, we do, because that's what we do. But most people, for them, it's a box that takes them from the ground floor to their floor of work type thing. But the reality is, when there's a problem, in a perfect world, we come in, that's the problem fixed, and she's done. But quite often there's what we call intermittent faults, where there's something going on in the controller or the brains of it, which is triggering something else, which is triggering something else, which triggers the fault. So we come along, go, right, this is the fault, we can indicate it, we download things, that's what caused the problem. And then we go away after fixing that, and then we come back, okay, same thing's happened again. So that's when we have to trace back and go, okay, we know it wasn't that because we fixed that. So then we go to the next step, and it can take 3 or 4 calls, etc. Sometimes, ideally, not any more than that, but it does sometimes. To actually trace down the real original fault. It could be something so simple or something so technical, but intermittent faults are a real bane for us in the lift industry.
And they're a bane for us too, because lift breaks down, you get the guys out to fix it. Oh, it's fixed, great. And then someone, it might fault again. Then someone says, "Oh, you haven't fixed the bloody lift." And it's like, well, we have. It's just these intermittent faults do happen. You've got technology, you've got moving parts, you've got a whole lot of different things that have to go right in order for that lift to do its job. Just on that, like you was talking before about the how the fixing of these lifts, and I wanted to ask about the lift technicians, because that to me seems like a very specialist type role. You can't, any Tom, Dick and Harry can't just become a lift technician. What would be like a baseline, like a baseline either qualification, or how do people get into the lift industry? Not literally into the lift, but into the lift industry.
Well, there's a few different ways. I mean, in New Zealand, we don't have a lift university as such, but quite often we've got an apprentice program. We have had for years, and the apprentices will go through and they'll work at each division of lifts. So that's the new install, the service, the repair side of it, the upgrade side of it. Then they'll have to go off and they do some electrical work. They need to be electrically qualified too. So they'll actually end up going doing that, and then ideally in a perfect world they stay in the industry and they work on lifts.
So basically you got to be a Sparky as like a sort of, you have to be a Sparky to work on
You don't have to be a Sparky. Ideally it's brilliant, but you've got to have competence. You've got to have your A and B in electrical, for sure. But it depends on the field that you're going in. If you're going to be engineering, mechanical repair person, which we need for re-roping lifts, and there's a big, heavy, hard work. These guys really hit us hard on their bodies, but they do it. So they don't need to be quite so electrical, because it's a lot more mechanical side of things.
That must have changed over the years as lifts have modernised. The lift technician's role, much like a mechanic, I guess, gone from like grease monkey to literally like a diagnostic type role with the technology, because they're dealing more with computers than moving parts like they used to. Would that be fair?
Yeah. It's very fair. Our lift technicians, they have laptops, etc. They can plug it in, all of that. A lot of the controllers now are built in with diagnostics tools, and it's pressing a whole pile of buttons, reading what's recorded, because we can get so much more information out of a unit now than what we used to. In the old days, you had big clicking relays up in the machine room, and you go, okay, which one's not sparking, which one's got covered in carbon, we'll give it a clean, we'll adjust the gap. Things were a lot simpler, but really, really heavy on the labour side of things. Nowadays, the guys can actually do a lot quite quickly via computers and diagnostics, which is brilliant. And so they don't have to quite be so specialist in the heavy mechanical side of things. But of course, and this is a big misconception by customers in the lift industry, for us, in 1970 or 1960, very labour intensive looking after a lift. Very labour intensive. Parts weren't that expensive, but labour intensive. Today, people think they've got a brand new lift, it'll be cheaper to work on. So we actually don't have to spend as much time. The brain power we have to have a lot more of. But the equipment and the tools and the spare parts and the componentry of a lift now, so much more expensive.
Yeah.
You know, if you were back in the 70s, you had a calculator, Casio, you nip down to Wickles and buy a new one, the warehouse.
Yeah.
But from our side of it, if you've got a new laptop, you don't just whip out and buy a new laptop because they're thousands of dollars. That's the kind of difference we're now talking about.
And so the getting parts, that's a huge thing, right? We've experienced that, in the past. We've had to have parts brought in from Europe. Is that still the case? Do we make any parts in New Zealand, or is it mainly all from Europe?
Mostly from China and Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. China's a big powerhouse there. We use China more as a supply, so they do massive amount of manufacturing, but they also buy in from around the world, from the States and Europe and wherever, we manufacture all the different componentry, and they store it so they can supply it as well. So we get a lot of stuff from China because of their ability to stock and supply and provide. We have a huge amount of parts in Auckland for our personal side of things here. And then we step up to Sydney, we've got a massive warehouse there. Then we go to Singapore, which is even bigger, and it just grows and grows. You can't, because there's so many different types of lifts these days, you can't stock everything. So you stock the generic things. You get a button. You generally like to always have buttons available, as long as they're still available. But when it becomes to intricate boards for a controller, you don't stock them, because ideally they don't break or fail, and they cost a fortune. So we can't just have them sitting on a shelf. So you get them in from overseas, and it's the way that the world works today, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I guess we've all experienced delays with getting parts from wherever overseas. It's just how it is with shipping and COVID and all that sort of thing. So take us through not so much the life cycle of a lift, we'll talk about that later, but from the point of view of doing, say, a lift in a brand new building, as opposed to like a refurbishment of an existing lift. What's the other aspect you mentioned before? You got new, refurb,
new, maintenance, refurbish and repair.
That's right. Yeah. So who do you guys get involved with when you install a new lift? Is it the developer or the construction company?
So that depends. Quite often, if you're getting in the early days, the architects, etc., will be talking to our new lift guys, and they'll build, because they've got to get the lift shaft has to be the right size, has to be made of the right materials. You've got to counter it. You've got to have the right pit depth. The overhead's got to be all correct.
Do you guys design that, or does the architect specify that?
We tell them what we need. So if they want to go, well, we want a lift that's going to take 25 people at this speed for this number of floors and blah 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 blah. Okay, right. Well, we need this size shaft. These are the options that you can have, and then we give them drawings and we give them that whole package of what they need. So that's in the design stage, and then obviously you've got to price it up, and that can go to the construction company or to the owner or the builder or whoever. Quite often it's with a construction company, because they would have tendered, won a job, so therefore they've got to get all the services in, and then it gets handed over. So yeah, we deal with both, but 9 times out of 10, it's the construction company that will have the install contract for the new lift or new lifts, escalators, whatever they're putting in.
So then once you've installed the lift, how long does it generally take to install a lift in, say, a 20-story building? Is it like a standard process, or is it all different?
No, it depends on what you're doing. If you're putting one lift in a 20-story building, which I don't think is a good idea.
True.
If you were, you take probably 6 months to get the thing from when you order it, and then that would take 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, all depending on the stages of the building. Is everything true and plumbed up? Because you have to fill the shaft, you've got to fill all the doors, put all that stuff in, get all the machinery in. We can do it in stages. So it all depends on the building, the construction, and what you're getting, and how quickly. If you just gave us an empty shell, so that's all done, or we're just waiting for you, we could rock it and get it done quite quickly. But that's never the case.
One thing I don't like is how I've seen it a little bit lately, where like the builders will use, instead of using say an external lift of their own, they start to use the building's lift to ship materials up the building, and it's like you kind of end up with not a second-hand lift, but the lift's done a hell of a lot of work before people even move in those brand new buildings. I guess that's not your guys' fault at all, but is that sort of a known thing in the lift industry, that you don't get a brand new lift essentially, unfortunately?
Yeah.
Tough question. Sorry,
yeah, sadly, it does happen. I mean, the builders putting an alley mat on the side of a building costs a lot of money, costs them a fortune. So if they've got lifts inside, and quite often we won't finish the lift, and so our install team will go, righto, the lift's going, we're not putting nice stuff on the walls, we're not going to rip all the protective layering off the doors, because we try and protect them as much as possible, and then say, well, you can use it, and they use it, and then we're given time to come back in and do a full clean down, and tidy it up and hand it up. Yes, it is getting used, and as long as it's not getting damaged as such, it should be okay. If they're filling it full of concrete, then it's going to cause some issues. But if they're using it to get their boys up and down, and the tools, and a couple of boxes of tiles for the bathroom and the 20th floor, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
And we just keep it clean. A lot of the construction companies now that we work with, they're really good, because they know the costs of what it costs for us to come back and redo it. So they really are quite heavy on protection around it themselves, because they know when they finish the job, they want to hand over something that's beautiful, and looks brand new. Yeah. But they also want to use it too, and I understand that fully.
Yeah, it's just something that we've noticed with a few new buildings lately. But like you say, you come in, give it a tidy up, and make sure it's all running well before it's handed over, and it shouldn't be an issue, right?
No.
And so the other aspect there is the ongoing maintenance of a lift. Like that's massively important, right? Because you got a lot of moving parts. You got computer programs talking to different parts of the lift and things. What's a like a fairly standard servicing regime for a lift?
From our perspective, the best option is to go with a comprehensive contract from a lift company, and for us. And what we do, if say you've got a 3 or 4 story building and you've got the one lift, we would put in, now what we have is a quarterly maintenance. We do three maintenance, general maintenance on the units, and it's broken down into different modules of what needs to be done. We look at timelines of when things need to be replaced or adjusted or checked and cleaned, and then we have one a year, a full, what we call a KSV service, and the guys come in and they go from top to bottom over everything, the whole shebang, and it's a big service. And on modern lifts, that's generally pretty good. We've programmed out what needs to happen, and we can adjust it, and that changes year on year to what modules we need to do. Gone are the days where we've got 2 people come in every 2 weeks and do work on lift, because they're not that way inclined. If you've got a computer board, for instance, it'll run, then it might fail, it might not, but if it doesn't, it keeps running. So you don't have too much to do there. Whereas the old days, the old clicking relays continually needed cleaning, getting rid of the carbon and adjusting. So it's different in today's world. So for maintenance regime, we comprehensive contract, because it takes away all that cost for people, or it puts all the risk on us as such, because if the board goes in the controller, it's on us. We come in, we replace it, it's on our cost. If nothing goes wrong with the lift, and not being silly, the lift industry, we're also in the industry to make money too. It's a profit.
Yeah.
So for us, if we have no issues with the lift, then the profit's not so bad for us. It's what we like. The more times it fails and we have to replace parts, that eats into our profit.
Yeah.
And that's not great on a comprehensive contract. So it is actually best for the customers. But people can change. They can have one where we just come do the servicing and keep an eye on everything for them, and they pay for any call-outs, pay for any parts, which some people, especially in body corporates, will look at in the early days. But long term, you should start with a comprehensive contract, and you should just, in my opinion, should stay that way. If you want to take the risk, you can. But as I said before, these computer components are not cheap anymore. They're not $5 off-the-shelf items. People just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, interesting. And the other one was the like the fit outs, I guess. After what's the general sort of now we can talk about the life cycle of a lift. I knew I was going somewhere with that. But yeah, so new lift, life cycle, then you go to refurb it. So we'll go life cycle now and then talk about the refurb because they're two different things. Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously you start with a nice brand new lift, lovely jubbly. We've installed it and it's perfect. It's day one. From there on, you have a maintenance contract and you go through that. And and say 5 or 10 years, not a lot's happened. We're maintaining it. You've had a couple of, hopefully you've had no call-outs, but you might have had a call-out. There might have been some parts you replaced. If you've got a comprehensive contract, it might need to be re-roped at some stage, which is the wire ropes, haul it up and down. A comprehensive contract, that's on us, so we'll come in and do that for you as part of the contract. 10 years, maybe 15 years, the lift is probably looking a little tired inside. You could look at doing a bit of an upgrade, so we do partial upgrades, or what we call tender repair items. So if you wanted to, you've got 10-year-old buttons and there's a nice new shiny yellow button out there, for instance, or whatever, gold one, you want to change it, we can do those. And we'll give you a quote, we'll do those minor little upgrade bits and pieces for you. And then you get to the cycle when with the Kone lift, the new ones, they're rated for 25 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So at year 25, you wanted to, you need to start considering budgeting for an upgrade or a modernisation or a replacement.
That's real specific to us because that goes into the building's long-term maintenance plan, and it's usually the big item where there's a big spike in expenditure. And these buildings that are onto it and are funding their plan accordingly, they will just be putting away money every year, and come lift replacement time or whatever, it's that's usually the big expense. It's quite expensive to replace a lift. Sorry, keep going.
I mean, the reality is, yes, a modernisation or a replacement is costly. It's like buying a new lift.
Yeah, it sticks
that's
out.
Effectively what you're getting.
Yeah.
And depending on your building and what you go for, is depending on where you can chop and change things. But a 25-year life cycle doesn't mean your lift has to be upgraded in 25 years. You could do it in 15 if you want. You could do it in 30. Just, we obviously in conversations with your lift provider or us doing the maintenance, we'll keep you informed. And if things are starting to go obsolete, you need to do it. But when you're doing a modernisation, so what we effectively do is we will rip out the brains of the lift, your buttons, the wiring, your lift cab. You can obviously have a new one as well. The indications, and sometimes even the motor, and put new ones in. But the lift cab itself, the structure of that, and what's the running gear inside the lift shaft, and the modernisation, that'll all stay the same. And you can do bits and pieces. You can do just the brain, the controller, and drive, or you can do just the doors and so forth. That breaks down into parts of what you can do. And then you have what we call a full replacement. You completely gut it, rip it out, put in brand new. But you've got, when you're dealing with the council and getting consents for different things in the building, when you rip out and put a brand new one in, if you're changing any of the specs of it, which you probably are, that might change surroundings, things you might need to do to the building. Whereas if you're doing an upgrade, you don't, because it's like for like, but it's just more, you're just making it modern.
It's existing.
And reliable.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's the key, is when parts get worn, like I used to have a 1955 Plymouth,
Yeah,
big
nice.
American tank,
Yeah.
lovely car, but it was old and parts wore out, so it was continually breaking down because that's what you expect.
And then the
And
parts
parts
become
getting
hard
harder
to,
and harder
yeah.
and harder to get.
Yep.
Whereas you've got a brand new car now, or a nice new car, plenty of parts around everywhere. It's fully accessible, but it doesn't break down. You don't expect it to break down. It's the same with the lift. When your lift gets to a certain age, in a perfect world, you'll never notice its age. Just keep running. But that's not real. You're going to expect things wear, then they start to, create a few issues every now and then.
Do you, so when you, with the lift refurb, say we talk about the inside of the car, cab,
Either way, whatever you want to call it.
Do you guys engage designers to do that, or is there like a sort of generic sort of 10 options that you can choose? Or because I've been in a lot of different lifts over the years, and there's some really beautiful ones, and then there's some ones where you go, carpet on the walls, that's from a very specific time, maybe the 80s or 70s, but it's you see a lot of stainless steel, a lot of mirrors, handrails and what have you. Like some of them look really nice with timber finishes and all that sort of thing, but who designs that? Is it you guys have a team that does that, or?
There's different ones. I mean, you can get, we have architects and designers and interior designers create them. Our guys do it. We know what we can put into a lift. So, the likes of you probably dealt with Grant at my office. You probably, he will go through it. He knows with mirror and glass and different stainless steel and perspex and this and that and all the different options that are readily available. But there are people who get, an interior designer to do something. I would always strongly suggest, that if you're going to have somebody else design it, make sure the lift company is involved, and certainly in installing and so forth. I remember going to a particular building, I'm not going to give any names, but I went to a particular building a few years or so ago, and they decided to do their own internal upgrade of their 3 lifts. It was a particular hotel, and they looked, I went and had a look where they finished. Beautiful Italian marble, looked stunning, really looked good. But they put so much weight in it,
Too heavy.
they couldn't put any people in it.
Right.
So they had to rip it all out, throw it all away, and start again.
Right.
But also, you don't want to have people blocking up vents and chopping and changing and drilling into, because you drill into the side of a car and you hit the trail cable, you're going to have months and months and months and months of issues, because they'll be intermittent. It'll be a real nightmare getting that. So involve the lift company. But really, the sky's the limit. I mean, the Kone's our new design of lift cars. We're getting some really, we put a lot of new effort into it, and I should show you or let you go and have a look at the website. We've now got an interactive mirror which we're putting in lifts. I don't even know what the cost is, but
What does that do?
well, basically it's a mirror in the back of your lift, and you can have a display on it. Words come up, and
So it's like a screen and a mirror.
It is. It's a interactive
pretty
thing.
cool.
It's really, if you on LinkedIn, I've got a connection to it. There's a little video that shows, obviously, Kone's name comes up, lovely, and so forth. But it's really, really, really cool.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, the Kone's our new what we call DX range of lifts comes with amazing new car fit outs. They're not just car fit outs. They're now we're working into getting inside how people want to have their building, how they want to look, what they want to portray as historic, are they into nature, as sustainable, and we can integrate the lift to give that feel and vibe as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing, eh? Like when you walk into a really nice hotel or nice building, the lobby's like that first impression, right? And the lifts are part of that lobby, and therefore part of that first impression. And to walk into a beautiful lobby with beautiful lifts, it's like, wow, it's great, and it creates that impression of the building. So it's an important part of that journey, like you say, from people moving through the building. You don't want a beautiful lobby and a shitty lift, or vice versa. It's interesting.
It is. I mean, there are still lifts out there with the carpet on the walls.
Stunning.
Beautiful, but
Works for some people.
Their own.
Yeah, it's fine when people are moving in and out. It's having the carpet on the walls. It's
you can't scratch carpet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I imagine health and safety would be massive in your guys' industry. You're dealing with moving parts, height, confined spaces. It must be a huge sort of focus for your team when you're I guess installing, refitting, servicing? So health and safety must be big for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably number one for us. You are talking about a lift that's a big machinery, a big steel machinery thing that moves in a shaft. Absolutely, there's so many things that we have to be careful of. We've got a very, very strict regime on health and safety.
Yeah.
And nothing's tolerated. And all the companies are heinously strong on it, because we have to be. Because what our guys do is for themselves. We want every single one of our guys to go home every night.
That's the saying, isn't it? To be able to go home at the end of the day, that's what everyone's aiming for.
Yeah, absolutely. But go home so they can come to work the next day as well. We don't want them slicing a finger or doing anything. So we go through and we try and work out what we can, and we want everyone to be safe, and users as well. And that's probably one of the hardest things to get through to some people coming out now with their own health and safety plans, and we've got to follow this, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do this. I can promise you, our health and safety and our competition's health and safety policies and what we have to do, far more robust than anything anybody else has got in New Zealand. We have to be. We've gone through everything.
What are the main priorities? Like, obviously everything from a health and safety point of view is important, but are there a couple of things that you guys tend to focus on? Is it mainly around heights or confined spaces?
No, we focus on everything, because you can't just go, right, today guys, I want you to look out for getting cut, and then you fall off a lift or no, they have to. It's everything. Heights, working with electricity, working with public, working with doors, and making sure we shut down lifts. So when we open a door, we're stepping on top of a lift or into a lift or anything else, the lift's shut down. It's not going to do anything. There's huge processes and the right way of doing things all the way through, and the guys just becomes ingrained in them. It's not about, okay, I just need to make sure I'm on the ground floor and do this. It's like, right, I must do this, and this, and this. Then I can go and do my job. And yeah, it takes time. It adds to the guys. You would say it's not lost time, because they're not losing time of their life. They're staying alive. It's a very valuable time, but it means time that they're not working on a lift. And where people sit there and go, oh look, we need the lift going. Get up there now and do it. Hold on. We got to do this first. Yeah, it's far more important than you being able to go up and down a building. I hate to say it, but that's the reality. Everyone's safety is number one. Yeah.
And so is there any particular area of the building, because I was going to say before about the old lift houses, on top of the buildings, they're not as common as they used to be. Like, you don't really see them anymore. It tends to just be a panel or like a little, it's kind of in the roof or something like this. You don't have a dedicated room like you used to back in the old days. I guess that's technology as well, but yeah. So the olden days, the machinery and the brains and the drive and everything was on top of the lift in the machine room, on top of the building. And yeah, people, you can't go walking in there. That's for our guys, because there's moving componentry. That is dangerous if you get too close and do something stupid. Whereas now the machine and all that is generally in the top of the lift shaft. So you as a person coming to work in the building, you can't get to it. Well, you shouldn't be able to get to it. Yes, and the controller is then on the top floor, on the side of the lift. So for us, there's a lot more safety for public. You can't get just access to stuff. But for our guys, of course, when we want to work on it, we're on the top floor landing, and we've got to shut down the lift and work on the top of the lift, which means we've got to barrier things off. We've got to make sure people aren't around, because we don't want them poking their nose into the lift shaft with the doors open. And we've got to make sure that the doors don't close, the lift's not going to drive away. And when we're working in there and working from height, you've got to make sure there's no one's working in the pit. When we're at the top, you drop a washer or a bolt from the top. Not good. So that's another thing is about people dropping their keys down the lift shaft. That's a classic, in the building management world. Oh, I dropped my bloody keys down the gap between the lifts, and several $100s later to get them out. To say, well, you either spend that or you just wait until the next service and the tech will dig it out for you, and we'll let you know. But then, mate, it's amazing the amount of people that drop stuff when they're getting into a lift. It goes down that crack in the between the floor and the lift.
Yep.
Happens all the time.
It does. I mean, I went around to a friend of mine's apartment many years ago, and when I walked in there, he was on the ground floor with the doors open with his fishing rod trying to hook his keys out. You know. Did he got them before he was like, oh, I knew you were on your way around, so I thought I'd try this first.
You're sitting there going, do I need to fill out a form for this or what?
Yeah, it's just like, oh, whatever.
But you've got to have that little gap, that little.
There's always there, and people do drop things, and you know, there's nothing. It's not deliberate. It just happens.
Just happens.
You know, people drop cell phones down the drains out in the street.
Oh, it's like it's like people who lock themselves out of their apartment, like they forget their keys inside, but they've still got their phone.
Yeah.
You know, no one ever really leaves their phone inside. They always leave their bloody keys, or so that's quite funny. The other thing about health and safety, I remember a situation years ago when the lift company recommended to the body corporate that they needed to put some safety rails on top of the lift car.
Yep.
And the body corporate sort of balked at that, and they said, well, why should we pay for this? And they said, well, that's our place of work, and it needs to be safe. And I was like, fair enough. But they still balked at it, and they thought, well, why don't you pay for it? And it's like, it's your lift. Is there a bit of a misconception that the lifts don't actually, they're like your lifts? They're the Kone or the whoever else's company lift. They're not actually the property of the building.
Yeah. We do get that a lot, actually. People have a comprehensive contract, as I said, and so they think, we don't have to worry about anything for the lift. It's all on you. The running of the lift and the upkeep, etc., is on us, or the maintenance on us. The upkeep of the building, and the lift is part of the building, and everything in it is the building owners. You bought it, the car park. If the car park crumbles, you're paying to fix it, aren't you?
Yes.
If the front door smashes, you're paying to fix it. If the lift needs a handrail because it's now the rules have changed around health and safety, because the old days, as you know, rules were health and safety was nothing.
Should be right.
And you climb on top of a lift. And as you can imagine, you've got a lift shaft, and every lift car, it can't go to the wall because then it would just grind up and not go anywhere. There's a gap, and we don't want our guys falling down that gap and slipping. So yes, having a handrail on is a good idea, but it is the building owner's is issue. And if the health and safety rules change, and somebody comes up with something new and adds it, great, we're all up for it. But it is your car, your lift, your building,
your cost,
I'm afraid.
Yep. No, that makes sense. The other common thing for us is with our cleaning team, vacuuming in the lift door guides, keeping those clear, because that can they can fill up with bloody dust or rubbish or whatever, and the doors can jam. And so our guys use it like a crevice tool and give those a bit of a vacuum.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's safe to do, right?
Absolutely perfect. I mean the door sills, the landing door sills in particular, because when the doors are closing, if something's there to jam up, a pin, a stone, a washer, a screw, dust build up. If they jam those doors up, those doors aren't going to close properly, they aren't going to lock, and then the lift's not going to run, or it's going to run for a second and then jam you and lock you in there. But also wears things out and makes a mess. So absolutely, if they can just quickly call the lift, if they put a box in front of the doors and jam the doors up, it's not going to be really a good idea. But where they can quickly and just scrape it, vacuum clean it, good idea. Absolutely a good idea. No harm in doing that at all.
Yeah, the other one, I guess we've got access to the panel where we can use the reservation button, just turn it off and then do the work.
That's a great idea. That's a better idea.
Yeah, exactly.
But make sure that if you're vacuum cleaning, people are vacuum cleaning the lift, don't drive the lift to the next floor with it plugged in still on that floor.
Seen that.
We've seen that before as well.
That.
Yep.
Yeah, the cleaners jumped in the lift, and I've seen it on CCTV, and the lift will take off, and they end up, the cord grabs, and it's like, whew,
Yep.
It's a bit of a very close near miss type thing. They have to get the vacuum off, and
absolutely. But and that's the worst part of it. But not only that, the vacuum cleaner ends will be stuffed.
Yeah.
And the doors in the lift will have damage, and it'll be pick it up again. So you'll be out of action for a day or two.
They're really like robust things, but they're quite finely tuned, eh? Like you can feel it. Like there's, they're not. It's not like a big lump of steel and concrete going up a building. It's like these delicate sort of parts that all have to line up with each other, and the way they move and that. I guess it's a bit of a nerdy thing. You probably get into every lift, and you're like having a good look around, and it is that fine. It's that fine line, for a lift to operate.
Yeah, my wife and kids hate it when we go out to malls or different buildings, and they're like, "Do you look after this lift, Dad? Why are you looking at it like this? What are you looking for?" Oh, sorry.
It's a curse.
That's the beauty with the new lifts. They are finely tuned. You get ratios down to a minute level, but that also means the safety devices are down at that level too. So anything slightly out triggers a safety device, which is what we want, obviously. But yeah, they are finely tuned. In the old days, doors just slam shut and off you go. Now it's more about a lot more of a pleasurable ride now. Doors nice and closed and quiet, and everything's nicely meshed together, and the floor levels are fine, and off you go.
On that, one of my most favourite lifts in the city is, I won't mention the building, but it's an old cage lift. Oh, stunning lift, so it's open, and it's got the old, you have to drag
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I bet I do.
Yeah, I bet you do. And you have to drag the concertina gate across, and I think you have to wind something even. But man, that lift was just the smoothest lift. It was a beautiful thing to ride in, and the fact that you can see everything working is pretty cool. I kind of like those old school lifts. Yeah, the new ones are cool too, but there's something about that old lift that's quite appealing.
Yeah, those old ones are lovely, and they're reasonably solid beasts. Not a lot really go wrong with them. However, remember the cage and the concertina cage. There's a lot of gaps in there.
Yeah, put your fingers through.
Yeah, so there's the bad side as well. But they do look really cool. I mean, there's one in the city, and I won't tell you where. And it's actually blocked off in public use. But you actually have to control it. You've got a stick, and you actually drive it up and stop to the floor level that you want, and then drive it down. It's a really cool old beast.
Back in the day when they used to have lift attendants, I guess there's someone that would physically drive the lift up. You see those in movies and old American shows and that. Because lifts have been around for a bloody long time, eh? When we were just talking about it before, is it 1850s or something like that?
1850s, I can't remember the exact year now off the top of my head, but Elijah Otis created the first safeties, which enabled a lift to go to new heights, which is what we now do. Because lifts have been around for a long time, lifting things up and down, and the Egyptians probably used it doing the pyramids. Who knows? But yeah, lifts have been around for a long time. But in the 1800s, Elijah Otis in America, we went up on a big platform in a show, and then chopped the ropes above him, and everyone thought he was going to plummet. But that's what he'd done. He designed the safeties, so it stopped it from falling.
So the brakes.
The brakes, basically, the brake safety system. So that's now allowed the next generation of lifts to go, and we've just taken it further and further and further and further. And now as I said, we can go a mile and a kilometre in the sky, and you can have double deckers, and we're doing one of these lifts downtown, which we're building is going to be a high rise, but the lift will go in, and it's what we call a jump lift. So they'll be able to use the lift for X number of floors as they build the rest of the floors, and when they build those, we can jump the lift up so it goes even further, and then they can carry on using the lift for those floors while we build the next lot. And so the innovation and what we can do to help people is in the industry is brilliant. But going back to the 1800s, the simplest type of lifts were around then.
Because on that, the lift, because we've been talking about technology and how lifts have evolved, but they're still kind of the same as they were, right? Like they haven't, like they're not totally different. They're not using maglev or whatever. They're still like a car and a cable or a hydraulic. Is anything sort of changing in that space, or is it still that's the basics of a lift? That's how it's always going to be.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say that's always how it's going to be. No, definitely not. But yeah, the idea of having a good solid roped lift, which is where the ropes are on to the lift car, simplistically go up over the sheave and the motor and down to the counterweight, the balancer out. The only innovations as I said, we've got these belts now. So it's all a lot of companies do the belt drive. We've got a fibre optic belt, which is what can go super light and go high in the sky. It's very, very tough. So the belts have actually changed the way we do things in lift design, which is what's now allowed us to get lifts into the lift shaft, because the machines and the sheaves can be so much smaller because the belts can bend quicker or tighter than a big rope. Hydraulics we generally don't do anymore. No one wants to put in a hydraulic. They were cheap when they first came into the market to fill a market space. Now it's not worth it. They're not robust enough. There's still some around, massive ones, because they're meaty. Yeah, but
we've got a couple of sites that have a car lift. Like, so you drive your drive your car into the lift and it takes you to your car parking floor. I think those are still hydraulic, maybe.
Don't think so.
Don't think so. Oh, okay.
If you're talking about the building, I think you're talking about. No, I don't think they are. I think you'll find that. I'm pretty certain they're traction lifts.
Okay. Yeah, but that's quite a cool thing. Like having a lift take a car. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Mad.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what do you enjoy about the lift industry? Because you've been in the industry for 17 years.
Yeah.
And you've seen a lot of changes, I guess. And
yep.
So what sort of enthuses you about the industry?
It's an interesting industry. No day is the same. Effectively, all lifts are different. It's integral to a building. So we're very crucial for all people, building owners, and that. But the biggest thing, because I've been in it for so long, and it's a bit more technical than some of the other things. But for me, I love dealing with the customers myself. The people around the city that I deal with. I'm a people person. I like people, and getting to talk something integral with them in their building. I know it's weird, but I do. I like the industry of what we do and what we deliver.
That mission sort of statement that you said before about people movement, very basic, but it's just exactly what it is, right? You're just getting people from A to B or 1 to 10 or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, someone who's selling Rolls Royces, he's getting someone from A to B in a luxury stance. Someone who's selling Ferraris, getting them A to B fast. But most car companies, they're all about getting someone from A to B, which is mostly what it's about. We're the same. We like to think we're the Ferrari, or not the Ferrari, we're the Bentley Rolls Royce of the market. But each their own. But that's it. We're getting people up and down, up into buildings and out of buildings, primarily. Yeah. Or when you're talking malls with escalators and travelators, people movement. So the flow of people around the mall in the right direction. Yeah, you do escalators and I guess we get caught up in lifts really, but you do escalators and the travelator things like at the airport and all that. Yeah, absolutely. We've got plenty of those around, and they're big beasts. There's a lot of mechanical work involved in those, but they just people moving, they move people around, and they're great.
There's a couple of like that movie. Charlie, was it Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory or something like that, where they get in that lift at the end and the lift can go up and down and sideways and any which way you want. I don't know if that's ever going to become a real thing.
Yep, it has.
Is it?
Kind of. From what I understand, and I've never seen it, but I believe many years ago, Otis designed a lift that went sideways.
Huh.
Why, I don't know. Because I think a car or a train or a bicycle would have done the same thing, or walking. But they did, and as I said, I've never seen it, but that's what I've heard.
Well, you'd end up with a building that's essentially all shafts and no like apartment or office. It'd just be, places for the lift to move to.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy idea.
Yeah. There's one thing I was going to ask too about. I guess we've kind of covered off the technology and that, and where things are going, which sounds pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Is that mainly going to be in commercial buildings? Is there stuff integrating into residential buildings? That's
residential, yeah. Yep. I mean, the things that we're moving into now with the APIs and all these sort of things, you can have it in any building you want if you want it. Not a problem. It's just really we've got to get it set up and put into your lift, and ideally your lift's modern enough to take it, obviously. But you can go in any building if you want. Some things, I mean, the destination control you wouldn't put in an apartment building because that's overkill, really is. But a big, massive high-rise building downtown, or a massive high-rise apartment building, sure. But if you've got 3 stories and a couple of apartments on each side, you wouldn't. The other thing that we've got for people was we've got what we call 24/7 connected services. So it's now a unit which we bolt onto put onto the lift. It's got a dual SIM card on it, and what it does is it monitors all the different factions about the lift, puts that out into the cloud, and our systems analyse that lift and what's happening to it, weather-wise and usage and speeds and all the different factors and vibrations, and benchmark it against other lifts around the world, and come back and go, okay, well, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this to the lift, and send us work orders, send guys out there. If it stops, instantly send out a notification, so we'll know about it before you do. But it also means that, like yourselves, you can have everything on your mobile phone and go, okay, I know exactly what's happening with the lift at the moment.
Is that essentially like creating some like artificial intelligence type thing? Is that AIs in the lift industry?
It is basically, yeah. It's our Kone system in the cloud is analysing what it's doing. So it sounds awful, kind of like my own analogy, kind of like a farm.
Yeah.
You go, okay, well if I feed these ones this, and these ones are in the rain, and the food goes soggy, they get hungry, they're not going to produce as much. So you're treating it like a farm. You've got all these lifts. That's the cloud side of it. We're not. Each person's lift is individual and well looked after, but it is benchmarking it around the world. So not just to your lift next door to you or one across the road. It's the one in Dubai and one in England and one in America and one in Spain.
That's amazing, eh? It's just having that information at your fingertips and to be able to analyse it, and that's where you must get a lot of gains out of that and a lot of insight into how lifts perform.
Yeah, we and I won't show you because it's confidential information to another customer. But when I look at reports for customers now that have this system, you can actually see if before they had it, we could do a call report, analysis report. You can see in a graph the number of calls and faults and things were going on with the lift that they were having to call us for. We would go out and fix or whatever. But then on the new graphs we have, the same graph, but on the underside of it, we have what we call it highlighted in green, and this is the stuff that our system's picking up. The connected service in the cloud is picking up, and the calls are starting to drop away from numbers because the system's picking them up and a stitch in time. But the massive thing you can see is that the calls that the customer, yourself, having to call us about drops dramatically away, and the system's picking them up before you do, and you don't even get to have to know about it or worry about it because we've dealt with it.
That's fascinating, and that's that utilisation of technology, and having sensors and having these lifts literally talking to us, saying, here's the problem. I can tell someone about it, and it's fascinating stuff, and it's good to see that there's useful technology coming into in the industry to be able to make things more efficient, and it comes back to that sustainability thing too. So it's real buzzword.
There's a lot happening.
It's funny, you can one of these weird things that people probably don't give a lot of thought to, when they walk into a lift and that, and you get in, it does its job. But as you've seen, we've been talking for over an hour. It's amazing. You could talk about bloody lifts all day, and
I could. I do.
You do. Yeah, I guess you do. Yes, that's cool. I mean, I've enjoyed that chat. That's a really good insight into lifts, and appreciate your time. So
that's good. I mean, look, the end of the day is, from my perspective, as you know, I'm here to help you guys. And we want the lifts to be doing everything they can, and we really want the tenants to be able to walk into a box, get up at the floor that they get it without having to think about it. That's brilliant in a very basic side of things. So anything more that we can do is whatever. But if any of your tenants or any questions you have from your followers and anything else, feel free to give me a call and let me know. I'm happy to answer anything where I can. Yeah,
we'll do. And it'll be good to see this one go live in a couple of weeks. And appreciate the time and the insight into the lifts. I was going to drop in a real terrible joke about I was asking you about the what you enjoy about the industry, something along the lines of it has its ups and downs. But we might cut that out. We might leave it in.
Unfortunately, I've probably heard a lot of them. One door opens, another one closes.
Oh God!
Up and downs.
Up and down,
up in the world, always going up in the world.
No, that's cool, man. Thanks for the time.
You're welcome.
Cheers.
Thank you.